Hello and welcome back to the Pawn Sacrifice channel. This is now episode 21 of the 924S Turbo build, and before I start getting into what's happening this week, a couple of things. So first of all, link for the series so far, everything to date if you're new to the channel and just stumbled across this. Second of all, the update from last week where I made this little water coolant takeoff thing, or the first part of it, which is quite nice and quite funky. However, when basically, well, here's the situation, is there's the O-ring which sits in there, and essentially when that's bolted down, that'll stop any water from escaping out of the sides, bearing in mind this isn't going to be a massive pressure, so that should serve its purpose. But where it should be sat like that, on this bit section here, it's dug in a bit too much and the O-ring is just sitting a bit low, which means obviously that's a point at which it can leak, or is likely to leak. So I'm going to need to have another look at this. I'm not giving up, but I've got just about enough of the aluminium bar left to be able to get that done, so I'm going to have one final go. I'm not sure how much of it I'll show on film because we've had a whole episode and the principles are the same, it's just the execution that needs to be a bit better. So I'm going to get that done. If that doesn't work, then what I'll probably have a look at is getting a factory water pump thing, which is what this was, which is all up here, and just seeing if I can get that modified for my needs. Mostly I think it's probably going to be getting the impeller out and then just getting that set so that it actually works and does what I need it to do. So that's the update from last week. This week is going to be all about the braking system. So I had to put a smaller, so this is an 8-inch BMW E90 something or other brake booster, and from the LCI edition, which is basically allowing everything to clear the intake manifold, because the standard Porsche one would be too big, and just basically get in the way of everything. I will just double check that now, but I'm pretty certain it is. Anyway, so I've had to fit this. The pipes coming out of it are, whereas the Porsche one essentially had three, so it was one front left, front right, and then one going to the rear, which was then split. And I'm now changing this to use this one instead. It also had an ABS system on it, so the pipes are actually a bit thicker that come out of here, but they'll be going and then splitting for the front and then the rear as it was. I just need to work out which half of the reservoir and which one of these is front and which one is rear. So I'll get on to that now. Before I can do any of this, I need to fix one of my mistakes. So when I was drilling the firewall for this, and to get everything in and get everything right, I accidentally drilled through the wiring loom on the inside. What I have done is I might use crimping and soldering, but essentially what I've got is these little terminal type thingies which I'm going to basically put over the wires on the inside, just crimp everything in nice and tightly in place, and then just heat shrink over the top of that. So I'm going to have to cut them fully to start with, and then get that done. So that's the plan for the moment. Hopefully that's going to be relatively drama free. It's going to be quite tight in there, but it should be relatively straightforward to get done. So yes, to the inside of the car this time and correcting one of my mistakes. So that's everything that I've mangled with the drill when it's come through making these holes. But I'm going to have a look and see what I do actually need to save first. Essentially, this is what I've hit, and on here, so this particular one, which is there's 5 wires going into that. Essentially that runs to something under the bonnet, which I have no idea what it does. I think part of it's a light, the other bits I just don't know, and I would be very surprised if it still works, so that I'm going to lose. And the other bit is this one here. This is slightly more important because this little box here, that runs the wiper motor, so it plugs in just under there. So first of all, what I am going to do is free this sucker up. Oh, hang on. Right, okay. This just got a bit more complicated. So I don't think I can undo these. So this definitely isn't the best work or the best way to do this, but I'm just trying to do what I can in the space without having to strip the entire limb back. Just crimping this brown wire together, so just take some of the covering off and then just get a connector on there and just crimp that on really tight, and it seems to be solid enough, so just take that up because the heat shrink was too small to go over the connector, which is a bit annoying. These other cables are all pretty much intact, so I'm just going to run some electrical tape around those as well. These last 2 little stray wires, just tidy up the ends there and just put a bit of electrical tape over the top to be extra careful. And while this looks like a bit of a mess, and it is a bit of a mess, just get some tape around the edge just to further protect it. Hopefully that's going to be all okay. I've got a horrible feeling I'm going to wake up one morning and decide this isn't good enough and then go in and restart doing the whole thing again, but hopefully this has got me done enough that I can move on to the next bit. Bonnet's not back on because everything's done and dusted, it's checking clearance again. I want to get the intercooler and exhaust piping ordered up and everything sorted so that for the intercooler side of it I can get everything done and prepped and then taken off and welded, and then the exhaust so that I can just get that done as and when I have time. As part of the measuring up, I was slightly worried that the throttle body wasn't going to clear the bonnet when it was mounted on the front of the intake manifold. So that actually has given me a few options in terms of what I can do there. Where the sound deadening has gone off the back of the engine bay, it's basically moved the brake booster back, which means that my little adapter block for, to go from the brake lever onto the brake booster, they're almost meeting now, but they're not close enough, but it does mean that I now need to remake this block, which is a bit of a pain. Thankfully I've got an offcut from when I made the bell housing adapter. It's a bit too wide, but it should be about the right size, so I'm going to start by cutting this down and then get to measuring everything out and get this remade. I'm not sure if it's the depth, but I'm getting 0 directional control on this. So chops all time, I think. There's my little block to start, which is too fat. I'm going to start, I think, by just trimming this down, and unfortunately, because the bandsaw hasn't proved to be much use, I think I'm going to need to do that just using the the cutting disc on the grinder. Right, this is now all nicely fitted and operating. You can see from the camera, unfortunately my random angle placement of the camera didn't quite work, but you can see it actually works quite smoothly, which is pleasing. What I need to do now is connect this up to the brake lines. So these hard lines here need modifying and changing, and I've got basically some adapters and whatnot. I'll go through these in more detail when I do the job properly, but the lines coming out of here are a different fitment, a different size to the original Porsche ones, so I need to do some modifying there, which is fine, only I went to have a look at this earlier, and the tool that I've got, I've basically got two tools for doing this, and again they're not within reach, so I'll show this properly next time. One of them is just an absolute nightmare to use. I just can't get it to work properly. It's very cheap, and I just don't like using it. So I bought a more expensive one, but it's for this size of pipe. In fact, actually, I think I used it to make up one or two of the pipes coming in here, just moving some spider webs, which is a nuisance. So again, I can't actually finish what I've started. So I've already ordered at lunch, ordered a new flaring tool for the bigger pipe. Hopefully I've got the right one, and then I can get on and get this finished. So basically it's just going to be creating new sections coming out of here, and then modifying it again. I'll explain it all properly when I go through it fully. So that's that. Inside's done, and pleased with that. So what I'll do now is I'll just have a quick go at remaking the water pump, the coolant takeoff, and see what damage I can do there. The reason for redoing this is on the last attempt the O-ring wasn't sitting, or it was sitting too low in parts. Right, once again this hasn't worked, it's sitting too shallow on one side. Despite my best efforts to get everything squared away and level, I don't quite understand why it's going the way that it is. It's very frustrating, but in the interest of actually getting this car finished, I think I need to get on and look at getting a standard water pump, which is essentially what the rest of this was. There was a lot there, there's a lot that I don't need, so I'm just going to have a hack around with that when it gets in. Mainly need to move the impeller, so that's on order. As I mentioned before, I've got a couple of bits on order for the brake system, so this is all just a bit frustrating. It's a lot of back and forth and things I've done before, very slowly moving forwards, but anyway, gives you an idea of the trials and tribulations of a DIY mechanic and some using basic tools. The other thing I need to do is some more cutting up. So this is the throttle body. I need to make an adapter plate to connect that to, then a bit of tube, and then onto the adapter plate from another bit of this, which is then going to bolt onto the intake manifold. This should be a lot less precise than what I was having to do with the water pump, which actually annoyingly would have been fine apart from the O-ring bit. I'm not sure if there's any other gaskety things that I can possibly use to seal it. I doubt it, but I might just have a quick look and see if there's anything I can do there, and I might even try and make that anyway. But yeah, apologies for the constant back and forth redoing of things that I've done before in previous videos, but it's edging forwards, and hopefully we're going to get to that tipping point fairly soon where things start to click into place, and yeah, start to make slightly quicker progress. Anyway, thanks for sticking with it, and we'll be back for whatever shenanigans next time. Some of it's going to depend on what arrives where and when, but who knows. So we'll see. Anyway, catch you next time. Cheers.